When we broke, you were talking about a vacation.
Oh yeah, taking the kids to down to Lake of the Ozarks.
And when was that?
Uh, well, let's see. That had to be about 1972 or 73, I guess. That sounds about when it was. And we took them all down and we rented a houseboat. And Denise was here also, and she went with us. So we had all of our kids plus Denise. And we lived on that houseboat for a week. And really had a great time. We navigated all over that Lake of the Ozarks. And I happened to be working with a fellow that he and his wife had a cabin on the lake down there. And they told me where it was on the lake, and I was able to find it. Where we got our boat was way off from where they were, but I was able to navigate that boat up to where they were, back into a cove, and found it. And we stopped one day at their place and docked the boat, and then they took us out in their little boat and let the kids water ski. So the older kids, and they had a ball doing that. Poor Denise never did get up off, but she tried.
That was for a whole week you were there?
A whole week, night and day. We slept on that boat. In fact, there was at least one night they had a thunderstorm, and we were anchored out there in a cove in that boat, boy. But we came through it okay. And I had learned, by the end of the week, I had learned how to navigate the boat at night. You have to learn how to read the signals on the shore, how to get from one place to the other. And I was able to navigate the boat at night. But we had a really good time for the whole week. We cooked on the boat, ate on the boat, and we went down by the dam and pulled in down there and walked around. There's all kind of commercial places there. We spent a day down there one day. But that was a really great weekend.
Now, did that lead to your interest in getting a boat for yourself?
No, and I didn't get a boat for myself. Lottie got a boat for herself.
How did that happen?
That came about through Doug. We have a friend, Marvin, who has been into boats as long as we've known him. Marvin married Dorothy, who was a classmate of Lottie and Brunetta. And Wilson is their last name. And he's had boats as long as we've known him. And he's graduated up and up and up to he's got a fancy boat now, a big boat. And he was talking to Doug this one time and said, you guys ought to buy yourself a boat. It's a lot of fun. You can really enjoy yourselves and all that. And Doug asked me if I had an interest, and I said, well, I love boats, and you know how many times we've been up there on that river, and we've really enjoyed it, but I don't know if I want to buy one. And Lottie started pushing. I mean, she wanted one. Lottie loves the water. She always has loved the water. And she said, why don't we buy one? I said, well, tell you what, if you want one, you can buy one with Doug. And that's what she did. She took her money and said, look, it's my money now, you get together with Doug and buy it. So that's what we did. Actually, Doug did a whole lot of shopping around until he found a boat that was, within our limits, and it was in good shape, and that's how we bought the boat.
How often do you go out on the boat?
Not very often. We got too many things going on, but we in the spring, like now, it's about time for us to get up there and start working on the boat and get it all cleaned up and minor repairs and stuff like that, you know, and get it ready to go. It's winterized now, so we'll have to put all that stuff together and put the water back in the engine, you know, and take the antifreeze out and start the engines up, get them running good and all that. So once we get that done, then it's just a matter of going up there and we spend the day. One of the reasons why I don't think I spend more time than I do up there riding on the boat is I'm the one that has to drive. I'm the only one that drives. Doug can't see good enough, and the women don't want to do it. Lottie and I went to school to learn how to pilot the boat and everything there is about boating. All four of us did, but they don't want to drive though.
So you end up driving.
So
yourself.
I'm the one, you know, and on a a boat doesn't go very fast. I mean, a houseboat doesn't go very fast. So any place you go, it takes a long time, and I'm the one that's got to be behind that wheel. You see. So, but it's nice. We enjoy ourselves.
Let's go back because I kind of left you back in 1961 or so when you were working at the hospital, and tell me progressively where you were working and what you did.
Okay, I told you I got the job as chief pharmacist a little less than a year after I graduated from pharmacy school, and within a couple of years, the hospital administrator started asking me to take on additional responsibilities, and before I knew it, I had gotten really into hospital administration, and I was in charge of a number of departments.
We're back again. Now let's see. You were talking about getting into hospital administration.
I was in, they got me into hospital management, and they put me in charge of all kinds of different departments in the hospital, outpatient clinics, central sterile supply, purchasing, receiving, dietary, all those different things. Well, anyhow, I got out of pharmacy and made another guy chief pharmacist. And anyhow, I was not progressing as far as the pay was concerned as much the way I thought I should be. And I was in a position then that I was pretty independent. By then I had invested in a lot of real estate, and of course I had the pharmacies going.
You started your own pharmacy.
Right.
How many did you start?
Well, I started one and then ended up with another one. So I was kind of independent at the time, and I felt like they were not treating me the way they should. They're getting a lot of work for nothing. So I ended up leaving.
When did you leave?
1970. But right after I left, a fellow that had been the controller at the hospital there some time before and who had done some bookkeeping work for me called me and said, "Hey, I heard you left the hospital." I said, "Yeah, I did." And he says, "Well, you need to come out here where I am because they need somebody like you, and I think you'd like it." Well, that was the Daughters of Charity. So I went out and talked to him, and I ended up taking the job there, and ended up retiring from them. I worked for them for 25 years.
So you worked from 1970 to
1970 until what?
1995.
6 years ago. 1990. Yeah, 95.
1996.
Was it 96? Let's see. I was 63, and I am now 70.
7 years.
7 years ago.
So during those 25 years, what type of things did you do?
Hospital management consulting is what I did. My first primary responsibility was negotiating contracts and agreements for the purchase of everything that hospitals use. The Daughters of Charity, when I first started, they had 37 hospitals. Later on, they became affiliated with a whole bunch of other hospitals, but starting off for 37 hospitals, I was negotiating the contracts with the manufacturers of all the things that hospitals use.
Equipment, supplies, everything.
Equipment, supplies, everything from paper clips to CAT scanners, millions of dollars. And that was the primary responsibility. But in addition to negotiating those contracts and then making those contracts available to our hospitals to use at those special prices that we had negotiated, we also reviewed and helped to manage the individual departments in the hospitals to make sure that they were taking full advantage of those contracts that we had negotiated. So we had to visit our hospitals on a regular basis, all of them, all across the country, and go in and do an audit review of their activities, their management activities.
So you did a lot of traveling.
Did a lot of traveling, right? And we would do a review on the entire hospital's use of our agreements and would write up reports on what was going on.
Did you like your work?
I really liked it up until the last 2-3 years, and by that time it wasn't fun anymore. It was too many politics and too many people doing their own thing, and nobody really interested in trying to do it the best way, you know. And it just wasn't fun anymore.
And that's when you decided to retire.
That's when I decided to retire, right. It just happened to happen at the time when it's time for me to retire, so I left there.
So it worked out fine, huh?
Right.
Now what about the pharmacy? Talk about your pharmacy that you started.
Well, one of the things that motivated me to go ahead and stay in St. Louis after I got out of school, I told you the pay was just ridiculous as far as pharmacists were concerned. One of the things that motivated me to go ahead and stay in St. Louis was because Merle, your dad, told me that he and some other doctor friends of his were going together to form a medical center, a doctor's office building. And that doctor's office building was going to have a pharmacy in it. And if I had an interest, I probably would be able to get the pharmacy and open a pharmacy. So I thought, well, maybe I'll stay and that will work out for me. And, you know, which in those days, that was the thing that pharmacists wanted to do. They wanted to own a pharmacy, you know, particularly a pharmacy and not a drugstore that had everything else in it, you know. So that was one of the reasons why I stayed in St. Louis. Well, sure enough, after I started working at the hospital, after 2 or 3 years, they got that all together and opened up Mountain City Medical Center. And I got the pharmacy. By that time, I had really moved up and started doing things at the hospital and making good progress, so I really kind of hated to leave that. And at the same time, Curtis Young, my friend, he had stayed on at the College of Pharmacy to get his master's degree. So he had gone to school for an extra year, and he was really just getting started. And he said, why don't you stay at the hospital and let me run the pharmacy? I'll run the pharmacy for you. And that sounded like a pretty good deal. And I thought, well, I can work at the hospital days, you know, and do my thing there, and then in the evening I can go over and work at the pharmacy, which is what I did. We opened it up, and he managed it, and has managed it from day one, and continues to manage it.
He still manages it, right?
Yeah. And of course he bought it, you know, it's his now. But he ran the pharmacy, and I stayed at the hospital and just worked there in the pharmacy in evenings. And later on, Some other doctors opened up another medical office building, and they had a pharmacy there.
Where was that one?
Tandy Medical Center up on Kings Highway. And the people that had that ran into some problems and ended up losing the whole thing. And I was able to talk to the owners of the building, and we got that pharmacy. So we had the two of them.
Were the pharmacies profitable?
They were profitable up until the last 2 or 3 years that I had them. They were not. It was not good at all, and that's why I decided to get out of it. It just wasn't worth it. The amount of money that I was making just was not worth the time. Curtis was interested in buying them, and as an owner, you know, he was able to do a lot of the stuff himself, and he was able to do okay. And by now they've turned around and they should be doing pretty well now. But that's by the time I sold them, they were not really doing that well. But when we first got them, they did pretty well.
What about the other one in the Tandy building?
It too started off okay. It did pretty well, but never as good as the other one. And one of the main reasons is I was not able to put as much time into that store when it started as I was with Mountain City when we first started it.
Now, you mentioned a couple of times the fact that you've been able to generate money. So you've invested in a lot of things over time, right?
Oh yeah.
What kind of things have you invested in, and what have you learned from that?
Well, the biggest thing that I invested in through the years was real estate. I started early in our marriage buying income property, and to the point that I had quite a number of units of income property, and I did that for years until that went sour in the city of St. Louis, and I ended up selling everything. Since I've been here in this building, in this house, I sold it all off. But I probably did better with real estate than anything else I've ever done.
Income property would be apartments and things like that, or,
yeah,
or commercial.
Mainly property, mainly apartments, but I did have some commercial property as well.
And it's done okay for you.
Oh yeah, it did very well for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, since you retired in 1996, right?
That sounds right. Yeah.
And what have you been doing with yourself since that time?
Only things that I want to do when I want to do them.
Which include?
I spend more time piddling around this house than anything else. I spend a lot of time in my yard, landscaping and things like that. I do a lot of my own repair here at the house, plumbing, electrical, carpentry, you name it. All those things I do myself. I spend time up on our boat.
Now, which boat are we talking about?
Up on Lottie's houseboat. Up on Lottie's houseboat. I spend a lot of time there, and often not just on the boat. We fish up there and do that kind of thing. And yes, I do go on the gambling boat every now and then and enjoy that.
Every once in a while.
Yeah. Lottie and I still, travel. And of course, we've got 3 children in Indianapolis, and we are back and forth there fairly frequently. And of course, the 2 here, we see them often also, visiting with them. But we still go. We go out. We have a lot of social activities that we get involved with. But that's pretty much what I'm doing. I'm not doing anything significant, but that's why I retired. So I don't have to do anything significant.
And you're enjoying that retirement.
And I enjoy every minute of it, right.
Right. Now, you said your mother came to live with you when you were on Bessie, right?
Yes.
And then she also moved over here with you, did she not?
Yes.
Okay. And then when did she pass away? It was after you moved here, right?
After we moved here, she lived here for 2 or 3 years, I guess.
And then your brother, did he live in the same apartment until she moved here, or what?
He lived in the same apartment.
In East Chicago.
Well, the apartment that I grew up in, where we lived, they, meaning my brother and my mother, moved to another apartment after I left, quite a bit after I left. And they lived there for several years. And my mother got married again.
Oh, that's right. Now, she married him. Now, what happened to that gentleman?
He died.
When did he die? You're not good with these dates. Huh?
No, I'm not good with these dates. But when he died, that's when she came to live with us on Bessie.
So what was he like?
You know, he was Mr. Washington. He was a nice man and a likable guy, you know, and he always liked us kids, and he did a lot. My sister, who wasn't too happy about him coming around in the first place, all of their kids consider him their grandfather, you know. They call him Papa, you know, like my grandkids call me. He was a nice man.
Now, your sister has how many kids?
3.
And what are their names?
Andrea, Jimmy, and Jeff.
And they live in Illinois?
Andrea lives in Gary. Jimmy, he may live in Gary too, either Gary or Crown Point. I don't know. And Jeff lives in East Chicago.
And where is she living now?
East Chicago.
Okay. Is she married now? Or
Her husband died.
what was his name?
Keys. Keys.
That's his last name.
Last name. Andrew.
Now, is she retired now? Or?
Yeah, I think she still works part-time though.
And what about your brother? What does he
Now
do?
she never did work, have a full-time job.
She was home with the children?
Yeah,
Okay. What about your brother? What does he do now?
he's dead.
When did he die?
We were on Bessie.
So a long time ago.
Yeah, shortly after my mother moved here.
Okay. I'm going to ask you. I'm going to give you some dates when significant things happened, and ask you where you were and what you remember about them. Some of these may go too far back. Do you remember December 7, 1941, Pearl Harbor?
I don't really remember that.
You were too young.
I was too young for that to really be fixed in my. I was alive, but I was for it to be fixed in my mind. I can remember people talking about the war starting though, and that people were going to have to go to war. But that's about all.
Do you remember 1945 when President Roosevelt died?
Yeah.
What do you remember about that?
Well, about him dying, I don't remember a lot except that he died, and I was delivering papers then, and it was in the papers. But during that time, that's when we were having air raids with blackouts at night. You know, when they make you turn all the lights off, and they were having what do they call them? Wartime junk drives where we were collecting all kinds of metal and stuff, and everybody would bring out everything that was in the form of metal and pile it on the corner of the block, so they could pick it up, and that was to recycle to make the war equipment, and things were rationed. You couldn't. You had rationing tickets for all kinds of food, canned goods, sugar. People who smoked, they had to have tickets for that, and stockings, and all kinds of things were rationed in those days.
Did people actually think this country could be attacked at that time?
I don't think so. I don't think people really thought about that. It was always a war over there. In fact, there was a song, that was the name of it, Over There, Over There.
Just like now, really, I guess.
Yeah.
All right, November 22nd, 1963. President Kennedy's assassination.
I remember that. I was at work at the hospital, and of course everybody had the radio going, and they were all listening to it. It was really a big shock to everybody. Everybody loved him, and that was, like I said, I was aware. I was at work in the pharmacy at St. Louis U Hospitals.
July 20th, 1969, when the man lands on the moon for the first time.
Again, I was at the hospital, but I don't know where I was.
You were at the hospital a lot. Huh?
Yeah. Yeah, that's where I was, though. And I do remember that, because I can remember that was just a fascinating thing to me, to watch that on TV,
September 11th, 2001.
Where was I? Well, I was here. John had come to help me in the yard that day. So I had gotten up early to make sure the back gate was open, he could get in the back, and I had gotten him started working. And I think I came in to fix myself some breakfast. Had the TV on. So I was watching it. When it happened, I was watching it.
And what was your impression or feeling at that time?
Well, when I first saw it, I just thought it was an accident. A plane that crashed into that tall building. Because I remember when the plane crashed into the Empire State Building years and years ago. And I just thought that's what had happened. But it was a much, much bigger thing, and they said it was a commercial airline, so it was a much more of a news. And then, while watching it, boom, there's another one. And then everybody knew that's no accident. Something's going on. So, yeah, I was watching it when it happened. And Brian Gumble was on, and he was sitting there at the window looking at it, and they were showing pictures of it.
So, from what you've described, you've seen things change quite a bit from when you were little till now. I mean, everything has changed.
Absolutely.
How do you think things have changed? For the better, for the worse? Are things the same? What are the most significant changes that you've seen?
First of all, I say, as far as I'm concerned, it's all been for the better. The one thing that I have said I'm not so sure it's been good has been how all of this has affected black people. It seems to me that black people, first of all, had in my early days, a lot more pride, self-pride. They had a lot more concern for other people. They were not as self-centered as they are today. People looked out for each other.